All right, welcome to the build. So it's moving quickly.
And their product velocity is intense. We're both pretty involved in the LangChain community.
This is going to be an industry, like the whole thing is going to explode.
The hype cycle, it's like just because you hear everybody start talking about these things doesn't necessarily mean it's the right.
Need to go back, find out more because it's really interesting.
We're both obsessed with AI and their entire stack is just pivoted to agents.
The next question that usually comes after that is like, well, I'm fine-tuning an open model.
That's the biggest thing with the latest spec.
It's an exploding distribution vector.
I'm really excited. I think everybody is. I'm not the only one.
The build.
I started looking into the experiments thing. I could probably do a little bit on that with you, but I
Yeah, and I
basically
was going to talk about the
at Dallas
evaluators.
Airport. Yeah, I got to it when I was at Dallas Airport like last night.
You got in.
Yeah, I finally got to it.
I'm going to see you on X, like the outrage at the airport video.
I thought it was actually pretty nice. Like every TSA agent was pretty friendly and surprisingly, like if I wasn't being paid, I would be fucking angry.
Yeah, no kidding. And doing like 3, 4, however many people's jobs, you know?
Yeah, like I find it like imagine running a business where every few years you just say to all of your employees, sorry guys, because me and the board can't get together and agree, we're not running payroll this month. Like imagine what would happen. And then,
I know, it's wild.
that business happens to be a business that controls air transport security and a bunch of other stuff, but
government's the top employer in the US, isn't it? I don't know if that's true or not, but
yeah, it probably is if you can count it as a single employer. But I think it's basically there's roles that they deem essential that literally can't stop working, but in this scenario can't be paid. I don't know. It's one of those things where like clearly politics gets the better of the outcome, right? It's kind of dumb. It's very dumb, actually.
I know. Sometimes you become distant and you hear people like, well, the government doesn't do anything anyways, forgetting that, well, there's all these people who are not politicians in the middle of it.
Yeah.
How's Dallas? You get some brisket?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm feeling so terrible this morning. I forced the guys I was working with I was just like, look, every time I come to Texas, I need to eat brisket. And they're like, all right, sweet, let's go for crazy barbecue for lunch, as you usually do. This amazing, massive beef rib. I've never had a really good beef rib. It was super succulent, and oh man, it was great. And probably why I feel so terrible.
Where did you go?
Some random place. It wasn't Terry Black's, but it was some random place that one of the girls at work chose. What I would like to see is if you can pull up that MCP server you built for me, because I haven't been able to get it running. We can just try and run it. That'd be sick, actually.
I was curious what you're doing with that data, or what you're experimenting with. And that was last week. We talked about Massive was Polygon, and then they changed. Probably spent a bunch of money on Massive.com. Well, they have. You were asking about how do you access this remotely, because you run it local on your laptop, and they have a Python MCP server out there. So I converted it. I just refactored it and deployed it remotely. And then the stock server, it has 52 tools. So I was having a hard time. Like, is my code not working, or does it just too many tools? And even testing the stock one had a bunch of issues. So I made a separate one. I'll be curious to get your thoughts, have you test it and see what you think. So in the second one, I implemented prompts and resources. I'd mentioned that last week, and you asked like, what is that? So I can show you.
It'd be sick. You've basically taken this random brain fart of an idea that I had and turned it into an actual product. I love it. I love hanging out with you, man. This is great.
The other thing we were talking about, like, hey, we should just be VC people or something, because we're so good at predicting. I was like, we should take the vault data and then use that in conjunction with the Polygon data, or the massive data, like the topics and the products that we mentioned. How do they perform? Get the TC index.
TC index. I have a feeling that TC index doesn't have access to the right deal flow. All right, let's get into it before I yawn too much. Yeah,
and then Minimax, or
Minimax, Well, the Minimax, there was that interleaved thinking blog post, which I found interesting, but we could hit on like interleaved thinking. It's really just like exposing the React framework that the deep agents, the LangChain deep agents kind of framework is also built on, right? Which is like plan, do something, reflect, loop. The interleaved thinking seems to be like a way you more effectively expose the component parts of that as thinking blocks. And Anthropic talked about it ages ago, but the Kimi 2 model, they had like a blog post saying like, if you're trying it on some inference provider that isn't configured for this, then it's going to be a worse outcome than if the inference provider does support that. That's sort of why they were writing that blog post. The other thing about them is, and we talked about that before, where like you use an open source model and some inference provider and the outcome is shit. Apparently there can be up to, based on a study, like a 10-point difference in baseline intelligence metrics between inference providers on the same open source model because misconfiguration, I don't know, like there's a whole bunch of configuration components that they talk about. But they also...
So that was introduced in Claude 4, I saw, like May 20, and then going forward. So is it available in the 4.5 versions as well?
Apparently, yeah. It's still in the API docs. Let's go and check it out. I'm talking out my ass about this.
Because they've had some other features that were beta that I don't think made it to the later versions. And then on a related note, I think it's somewhat related. Did you see the Google paper that came out yesterday about, what were they calling that? Nested learning?
No, pull that up.
Yeah, pull that up and give that a glance. I think it's just right along the exact same lines. And it kind of reminds me, I didn't read the entire paper, but one day I said something about local models, and I have this idea where it'd be great to have like a constantly evolving pipeline.
Explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I was talking about, I think it was with the DGX Spark, or you're asking me, but like, what's something interesting you want to do with the local? And I mentioned having some type of pipeline of like all your data feeding in and processing, enriching, creating metadata, etc. And I think it's actually kind of like whether I'm explaining it well or not, what I'm thinking, I believe similar to this Google nested learning paper. Or the idea.
Figure this out. Paradigm for continual learning.
On the spot.
Views models as a set of smaller nested optimization problems, each with its own internal workflow in order to mitigate or even completely avoid the issue of forgetting. Okay, right.
Getting this server added back in here. So, but yeah, and then they talk about what's the terminology they use? Like constantly evolving self-referential process, and it modifies it has the ability to basically self-improve, modify itself.
That's cool. Yeah, this is a approach to continually, updating the model's parameters with new data often leads to catastrophic forgetting, where learning new tasks sacrifices proficiency in old tasks. That makes sense because you're basically optimizing, right? Researchers traditionally combat this through architectural tweaks and better optimization rules. We have treated the model's architecture, the network structure of the neural network, and the optimization algorithm, as in how it's trained, as two separate things. NeurIPS is actually happening in a couple of weeks down in San Diego. I was thinking of going.
NeurIPS? What's that?
It's like the premier kind of AI research conference. It's like full on nerd fest, but now it would be crawling with VCs and stuff. And companies trying to recruit AI researchers. But it's a couple $100. I'm like, I probably wouldn't understand anything in any of the talks anyway. So
it's right in your neighborhood.
It was curious when I was looking at the registration.
Well, Mexico City and then San Diego.
Yeah, I was looking at the registration. There was a checkbox to say, do you agree to being recruited by sponsors? So there must be a lot of energy going into trying to find decent AI researchers at these things now.
Yeah, where do you feel like things are at as far as funding and VCs and the market? Because you're starting to hear all this talk about bubbles and
yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Just
Yeah. Like, what do you think?
What do I think about all the bubble talk?
Yeah.
It depends for who. Like if I'm OpenAI and Google and those bigger companies, I think it has it's obviously a much bigger concern. But for like practitioners, startups, I don't feel like it's gonna. I mean, don't get me wrong, it takes some wind out of the sails, but I don't think it's nearly the same if you're talking about like a hyperscaler versus what does that mean for whether it's people like us or not Google, not OpenAI. I don't know. What do you think?
So the reason why we're talking about this is a guy called Michael Burry took a short position on Nvidia and Palantir at some point in the past, but it was made public last week, or sometime last week. Do you know, and have you ever seen The Big Short? Do you know that movie with Christian Bale?
Yeah, I was just talking about this with someone else, and yeah, that's one of my
Yeah.
favorite movies ever.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, that and Margin Call are my two favorite movies, actually. Which basically are dramatizations of time periods, very short. In my case of Margin Call, it's like one day in the life of apparently like I can't remember which investment bank on Wall Street around the 2007 kind of 2008 crash moment. And The Big Short is the longer time frame. Michael Burry, played by Christian Bale, was a and continues to be an investor who tries to take market short or long positions relative to the orthodox view at the time, right? And so he identified that there was significant mortgage fraud coming through in mortgage-backed securities that were rated at a certain level, AAA rating, or the rating was significantly higher than the actual value of the underlying asset. So he took a massive short position, got a huge return, but it took a long time. And then he took these positions out on Nvidia and Palantir. Thank you. Now the Palantir one is interesting because their PE ratio is really high. It was like 600. Now it's like 400 at the end of the week. After that, they just had one of the best quarters ever. But they are an actual software play, right? So it's slightly different. They are probably significantly overvalued, but they could grow into that valuation, or they could stay there, just like heaps of other software companies have done in a similar way. Like CrowdStrike has this crazy overvalued PE. They had that massive dip, but some of them just stay super high. Nvidia is different though. Like, I want to know why he is doing that. He basically tweeted out that there's like a couple of things. He tweeted out that like CapEx and OpEx. CapEx spend for the big hyperscalers is just going through the roof. We've all seen those charts, right? That's number one. Number two, there's this self-referential kind of economic engine around AI where people are paying each other and cashing checks that basically either haven't been paid or it was like their money going out to other people. Now, the diagram that he actually shared on his Twitter account for that doesn't necessarily quantify a lot of those things, and there's a lot of garbage going in there. I might actually bring it up because some of it doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, my comment was, so I hold Palantir and Nvidia, and I was like, well, ever since the financial crisis, he's pretty much been wrong on these short positions, I believe. And then my next comment was, but I think he might be right. And it's because the day before that, I was looking at just like the aggregated graph, and it was going straight up. And I was like, well, that's not good. I have not, and of course you see like steep increases, but it was going straight up.
Yeah, I think I've got it here. I can show you. This one, right? This is their capital expenditures by the hyperscalers. Now, so I watched The Big Short on the plane on the way home from Texas last night. I was thinking about this and I'm like, I wanted to watch it. Now, I've read the book. Obviously, the book is significantly more in depth, and it's like the movie is a dramatization. It's not accurate, right? Like it's like a heist film almost. But I wanted to try and understand, the perspective. There's a thing about like these kinds of bets where like you can be wrong for a very long time before you're right, as long as you can stay kind of profitable for long enough if you are right eventually. But a lot of people can't do that. And that's the problem, is like these companies have a lot of cash and they are plugging cash into these players. You know, we could stay in this mode for a while before he eventually is right. The thing that I would say is like, he's like basically saying like there's like this crazy, you know, CapEx growth here, and it precedes a bunch of other bubbles, right? The Palantir one is, I'm more worried about like the Nvidia kind of story, right? I don't know about you, but this is the, you know, circuitous kind of like money machine kind of diagram, but it's not real. It's not real. Like this, because there's a bunch of other stuff going on in here, like just random, like they've just put random things on this chart just to make it look interesting, like any sphere cursor. Like why is that there? Like that doesn't, like, that's kind of dumb. But I guess I take the point. There's like a bunch of self-referential kind of transactions going on. That's sort of like, this is just basically a vehicle to sort of basically describe that. No doubt that there's a component of that is true. But on the flip side of that, this is kind of how all economies work, right? Like every economy is self-referential. If you go out to a big enough scale, I give you $10 and you give me some, you know, software consulting, you might take that $10 and go to a barista, buy a coffee. That person gives you the coffee, and you give them your $10. Like that barista might then go out and buy a t-shirt from an online store that I actually happen to run. And then I've still got that $10, but along the way, there's a bunch of value being created, right? Like that's the whole idea of an economy. If it's all like self-contained and there is a bubble, then yeah, like you kind of expand and rapidly grow. But underneath all of this, there is actual value being created, number one. Number two, everyone who references this kind of like to the tech bubble here, is like none of those companies were actually making any money. Like that was the problem, right? Everyone's afraid of the dark fiber moment of the tech boom, where like Cisco rolled out a bunch of fiber. There was just no take up in like internet services. The whole thing collapsed. Cisco is only just recovering to its point where it was in the valuation back then. Right now, AI boom. Every single person on earth basically has access to AI right now. So the distribution's happened already. Number two, we're all paying for it. Like Anthropic's like crossing 7-8 billion in ARR. OpenAI is as well. Like we are all handing over cash for these things. That is different.
Yeah, but I saw something, I think it was Sam Altman or someone tweeted, they said like however many, 700 million, 800 million users. And I want to say I read like 5% are paying customers. It was like shockingly low, whatever that was. So you can fact check me, but
yeah, no, I believe that. And even on that basis,
I mean, when I saw that, I was like, whoa, now I got to find out what it is, but that's way less than what I would have thought.
I wonder if that also include, like they'd have ChatGPT users. Yeah. And there's like 800 million or something like that, daily active users. I'm not surprised that only 5% of that user base is paying, but then there's a whole stack of other users who are paying via the API. And I wonder how often that gets accounted for. But also, you can't really reach, it's very challenging to reach. In fact, probably impossible to reach like hundreds of millions, if not billions of users without some sort of free model that is subsidized by some other thing. So these guys, like Sam Altman has to subsidize ChatGPT via advertising or some sort of transaction play something. Maybe it's like the App Store model where they charge or they take a percentage of transactions, something like we were talking about last time. Like they're going to have to do something because you can't sustain a large like user base like that without some sort of underlying either advertising model or something else, which is what we saw Facebook do, right? Like Facebook got to that level, and then if you remember, they launched their ad platform in like 2009. They've been going since 2003.
I was hoping we'd have some better ideas this time around, but I guess not. Just back to advertising, and then you have the rollout of Atlas browser. I mean, everyone's creating these systems and different entry points.
I don't know. Advertising is still a transaction, right? It's just you're just selling your attention. It just happens to be that the transaction value is so low per attention moment. But going back to this Big Short thing, like this is the other one that he mentioned, which is like cloud segment year-on-year growth. Basically, he's trying to make the argument that these companies are spending a shitload on CapEx for these chips, but their actual growth rates are slowing down, like time periods. Now, again, this is kind of a challenging thing for me to grok with, because like if you consider the scale of those cloud businesses, it's challenging for you to grow. In fact, it's incredible that any of them are growing at the scale that they're at. Like the fact that Amazon can grow at all at the scale that it's at is incredible to me.
Right.
The fact that Microsoft has basically caught up to Amazon in terms of its cloud business. Like, what is it, like hundreds of billions of dollars a quarter going through all three of these into cloud spend?
Yeah. Well, that's the huge difference between the .com is like our entire economy relies on these companies. That was not the case.
Yeah, all of it is coursing through these things. But you know, bubbles do emerge. So to go on the bull case for him, bubbles do emerge. It's just like where they come from. What I want to know about his position is, does he have information that we don't have? So that's why I was watching The Big Short last night. It was kind of cool because it was a summary, and basically one of the characters just says like, all right, if there is a bubble, it's two very simple questions. It's like, how much of, like, is there a bubble, and how exposed are the people we're shorting against? So if you take Nvidia as an example, the main thing that people are worried about for Nvidia, like their crazy valuation, is driven by this chart here, which is every quarter they're just printing cash. Every quarter they're printing cash. So this is an annual, so 2025 annualized, it's 130 billion in revenue, but their EBIT number is 83 billion, right? Like that's their net profit margin's 55%. So that's the thing that everyone's just like, when that cracks, that's when Nvidia share price goes down. Like if there's some sort of break, then, so my question is like, well, what information does he have to suggest that because that's crazy and unsustainable. Like no business really at that scale can sustain that without some people coming in and saying, I'm going to take a chunk of that. Like net margins never stay that high at that scale. People come at that because that's how kind of markets work. And so a couple of things on the horizon, I don't know if you think about this, like that would break that, are chip efficiency. So are there breakthroughs that mean that NVIDIA's GPUs are wildly less efficient than comparative chips, or the same chip doing the same workload, right? Which is some of the research that's sort of popping up, is like, all right, well, how can we make these chips more efficient because there's a bottleneck of power? If there is like a dramatic like efficiency gain in terms of power consumption, it basically means the same workloads could be done on the same, like way more workloads could be done on the same chips, either on training or inference. Inference we can put to the side slightly because it's a different kind of paradigm there. That's number one. Number two is, could it be broken? Could their monopoly be broken by some through their stack architecture? Because they've got like GPUs, but then they've also got like the software stack in between, right? And their ability to like basically dominate these, like this data center kind of infrastructure market with Nvidia plus the Nvidia stack. Now, if you remember, we were looking at, I think it's modular, CUDA competitor. This one, Mojo. These guys. So these guys have been working on this for a while, and it's modular AI. I talked about them briefly. Basically, the whole idea is to break this CUDA kind of software lock-in around NVIDIA. So there are these like different like initiatives, modular. Now, it might not be this guys, it might be someone else. Basically, there are lots of people who are trying to break the NVIDIA stack apart, the NVIDIA dominate, like how they dominate this category. And it's also happening on the chip fab level. It's happening everywhere, right? So the question is like, are any of those looking like they're actually going to break it? If they will, how quickly will that margin disappear? And that's the short, like that's a short position. So that's how I was thinking about it. It's like looking for things like this, to try and see like how far along they actually are. How quickly could they get distributed out through, Google's Ironwood,
Man, it seems
new
like
chip stack.
such a long shot that anybody could touch NVIDIA. I mean, never say never, but you're talking about chip efficiency. That was one of the big things that Jensen was talking about last week at GTC. I remember him talking a lot about co-design, and they're getting now I'm just like 10 times 10 times the performance with only twice as much improvement on the hardware side. And he was saying that they're doing that by co-design, where it's like full stack essentially from the ground up designed so that every component is designed to work together, rather than taking something that they already had and then adding a better component on top of it. It sounds like they've kind of taken a big step back. So I have not checked out. Yeah, I remember you talking about modular, but I haven't jumped into it.
When I heard about these guys, they were literally just coming out of like an open source kind of a drive. And to be honest, the interview that I listened to with the founder of this was like 90% over my head. Like, this is hardcore shit, what these guys are doing. And so you would probably get a lot more out of it as a more technical person. But I just took the high level takeaway I just took was like, if these guys can break this kind of software lock-in, it may open up basically, a true AI hardware portability for workloads and training, inference, all sorts of things that is currently still pretty locked to Nvidia. That was the description. Now, it might not actually be true anymore. It might have moved on, and maybe the other players have got other execution frameworks. And we know that DeepSeek, that one of the reasons why DeepSeek was such a big moment is because they bypassed some of the CUDA components and went straight to building their own shit to run on, or get closer to the hardware. So it may be that there are other initiatives that are not public that are actually achieving this now. Anyway, the high level outcome is if there are a bunch of these things running to enable people to build new models, more efficient models than the frontier models, or the frontier model labs can go onto other chip providers, that will really dramatically hurt the Nvidia valuation, right? It's just a matter of, and it will happen. It's just a matter of when, right? Because I don't know
how much of an impact it will make.
Well, it might not have an impact on actual what we do day to day, but it might have an impact on the crazy valuation that Nvidia has.
Yeah. I was going to say, I talk a lot about the running local models, and in the near future, I think you can get a lot done. I mean, you can actually today. I'm seeing some signs of these hyperscalers thinking that way as well. Like Azure, I don't know when this came out, but I just came across it the other day. They have Azure Foundry Local, and then they have AI gateways that you can deploy locally. And it's kind of like to create a ecosystem or an entire network. But I'm not the only crazy person thinking about running things locally. And of course, you get a pushback, and people are like, well, they're not even close. You can't even get close to running what you need to do, like coding or state-of-the-art stuff. But computers, the chips are just going to keep getting better. Microsoft has those NPUs. So I think there will be a moment where, not to say that everyone's not going to be running local models on their computer, but I think there's going to be a moment here soon where it actually starts to make a big impact. Oh, and then it was the Nokia. What I was thinking of, he was talking about the partnership with Nokia and redesigning whatever they're coming out with he called it like a new computer. He's like, Windows doesn't exist anymore, basically.
Do you want to show me? I can stop sharing this.
Yeah, that's what that was from the YouTube video. I'm trying to find a blog post about it, because it was DSX. I think DSX is like the operating system, and they rolled out the DGX Spark, which we've talked about. So really laying it out as like a distributed system.
You want me to stop presenting? You can check it out.
Yeah, I'm still looking. Mission control, it looks like. Yeah, I mean, I was watching this in the background, so I was just listening to him. I didn't even read about it. So I don't have anything in depth other than I think there'll be an impact with portability.
Yeah, I wonder about that. So I was looking at the Minimax model, the new one, like this thinking model. So we talked about M2 last week, and then in between there, they came out with the thinking version, right? Which is why we were talking about interleaved thinking before.
It's Kimi. I said that incorrectly earlier too. It's Kimi K2 Thinking.
Oh, it's the Kimi. Man, it's too many of these.
That one came
models.
out.
Here we go.
Yesterday. Kimi. Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, these guys are gone. Yeah, Moonshot. Yeah, cool. All right, these guys had been quiet for a while, right? Kimi K2 Yeah, here it is. So I know we tried it when it came out. I basically forgot about it. I was just like, I don't have time for this. But on the local side, and these may change, right? But this is enormous, this model. It's like 1 trillion parameters or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, total
There's
parameters is 1 trillion, but
250.
activated mixture of experts activated is 32 billion. So there's no way, like you're just never going to run that locally. Like it's just not, there's no chance, right?
Yeah, but you're talking about that model is competing with the state-of-the-art models. So I totally agree.
Hmm.
Not anytime soon are you going to be running that. But we take for granted, I think, like how fast these models are getting better. I brought up GPT OSS. I hear a lot of people say it doesn't work or speak negatively about it. But if you set things up as like systems or multi-agents, you can actually get pretty good results out of these smaller models, I think.
Yeah, I don't know why everyone's so down on GPT OSS. Like, yeah, they're pretty down on it. This is pretty interesting, this thinking model result. I guess what I mean is like maybe its model architecture needs to change. So I don't know, but for like we're gonna want like state of the art locally, right? That's kind of what we're gonna want because we're used to it in the cloud most of the time. Or is it going to be like the hybrid? The model will always be like the hybrid future, where like integrated into your operating system there will be a model router that's like hybrid.
Yeah, I think so.
That is like able to do the switching between cloud and local depending on your needs dynamically. So it's always abstracted away. What do you think about local like this trend around like AI operating systems? That was really popular for a while, and now not many people are talking about it. Around how like, oh yeah, the entire OS will be reimagined to be like LLM first. I don't even know how that would work. Like, because that's like the end. That's
everyone had to figure out how
right?
to define agents before we could talk about that. But yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, you heard it a lot early on. I don't know, maybe. I think that all these things essentially are building up to a agentic operating system, and I'm building on a lot of components myself that are kind of along those lines. I mentioned like building in the cloud, building on all the different primitives of whether it's storage or whatever it might be, but you have all the components of a computer. They just might be distributed or in a cloud somewhere. It doesn't resemble a computer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's something that ChatGPT and stuff has talked about a lot with their their device, apparently, that may or may not emerge in the next couple of years. And this was released a while ago, which was Chrome, like built-in AI running on local hardware, right? They're releasing a bunch of APIs for this, but again, I haven't really heard anything about it or anything more other than that, just that launch. These guys will be pretty close because they already use like Chrome as an operating system, right? On Chromebooks. So they could get pretty close, I assume, pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's not a sexy topic. I mean, I don't think you're going to get a bunch of clicks writing about that, but I think it's super impactful. I mean, and I've also read some about. Go ahead.
There you go.
I talk about MCP all the time, but even moving MCP, like if you had browser extensions that are MCP integrated, and I think it's going to start being more portable and moving in different places we didn't expect. That you'll have like MCP integrations, and man, wasn't it even? I don't know if this is new, but I got an email from Anthropic, and the topic was how your sessions will resume. Like you can just transfer your sessions in whichever of their apps you're using.
Point to point. Actually, on Anthropic, did you actually use that Excel plugin? Did you see that? Oh, did you try it? The one you sent me. So you got access to the Claude Excel plugin.
Right. I haven't even. I kind of forgot about that, but yeah, I got access to the beta. I installed the plugin. We can try it if you want.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So here are the benchmarks for this K2 thinking model. The one that caught my eye actually was this one, the browser comp one, because we've talked about that. Browser comp
Mhm.
comparisons like Claude Sonnet 4.5. That was the one we tried, right? On browser comp. GPT-5 high, and apparently this K2 thinking model is just fucking crushing it on that, which is kind of cool. And you know how when we covered when we were talking
It's
about
interesting
agentic,
that Claude is so low.
yeah,
It's so low on these things, and that's where it's like, well, I use it every day, and if I were going off of vibes, I wouldn't put it that low. So I don't know. A lot of it is whether it's overfitting for the benchmarks or just the way that
yeah.
I don't know. They just work differently, but I know it's like shockingly low for
Well,
Anthropic.
yeah, but you and I use Claude 4.5 for coding, right? And it still dominates. So you look at this like SweBench, Sui multilingual, different coding. I don't know what live code bench is actually, or competitive program. Yeah, but like it's still the best here. But it's specifically on browser use, agentic search and browser use. But
Yep.
I don't know. I don't really use that for anything in Claude. I do actually have a couple of use cases through my day job now where I'm like, oh, actually, maybe I do need to build something in that domain. But still, it'll be a fucking pain in the ass to manage it. Can you imagine debugging a browser use feature with users? That would be a fucking nightmare.
Oh, to roll it out. Yeah.
Yeah, because then you're like stuck basically debugging other people's websites. Like that would be a pain in the ass. Yeah. Users coming
Well,
back and
none
saying,
of
why
these
didn't it work on
solutions
this
are
random website? I'm like, mate, I don't manage that website. Like, that's not my problem.
right. Yeah, that's I've spent a lot of time in my life on conversations like that. But yeah, really none of a lot of the stuff that we talk about here is it's not manageable in an enterprise. They're not really enterprise solutions yet. You're talking about rolling this out. It's like, well, you just manually install it. I mean, there's so much work to be done on that side of the house.
Kind of want to try this Kimi thing. Lots of
Yeah, we
tools.
can. I have it. They released it on Olama. Once again, here in Olama Turbo, the cloud offering. So they have
Are
it on
they?
there, and I set it up. Yeah,
Sick. Do you want to show me? I'll stop
yeah. We
presenting
could
that.
also we could do several things at once here. I guess I have those massive MCP servers.
Oh, yeah, let's get into that. Oh, okay, stop bitching and moaning about Nvidia and shorting things.
So
Sorry,
this is
that
risky
rant.
now.
That rant went on for a while.
No, I enjoy it. I didn't think it was a rant. Am I sharing? All right, I'm gonna risk
Yeah, I
it.
got you.
Risk it here on my homemade desktop app.
Risk
I
it
think it
for the
works. It works
risk it for the
pretty
biscuit, my
well.
friend. Risk it for the biscuit.
Yes, sir. So, Tom, you were asking about this massive MCP server. So I set up two different versions, massive, massive, and massive two. And just a little bit ago, I mentioned how if you look at this massive, the stock server, there are 52 tools, and I don't know if it's exactly accurate, but I estimated it at like 40,000 tokens just when you load, just when you start the app. So there's been a lot of discussion about that type of stuff in the MCP world of overloading your tools or combining them, having better ways. You know, maybe you have one, there are some servers that have one tool and it's more search and doing things on the back end. So with that being said, I was like, I think this could be a little bit better. And it's not quite optimized, but I cut it down to, I think, like 10 tools. And you can see these are more like, I guess, like aggregated functions.
That's cool. So can you open one of those and just see like, or is this like, does it give you the details? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is still pretty
Let's
raw.
search. Yeah. Yeah. Basically grouping them into tasks that use similar or combined tools, right?
Right. Yeah, and I'm not an analyst or anything like that. So yeah, I'm sure you could do this better. But I was
Well,
just trying to
actually, I
get
think this
the,
is sort of what that initial version that I was playing around with Claude tried to do as well. I was actually looking through that code, and it's very similar. It was like, yeah, a couple of key tool calls rather than just like get an individual options contract. Yeah. Sorry, can you keep sharing
yeah.
your screen? Is that?
Yeah, I'm just gonna switch to Claude because it has a better layout. You
Hmm.
can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's cool.
Just in Claude, I don't have Kimi, so we'll go back to that. But here you can
I really
see.
want to try that MCP thing out. Yeah, there we go. All right, sick. Oh, that's Yeah.
So this is the stock. Like if you go to the official GitHub, these are the tools that you get. There's like 50 of them. So last week I mentioned to you, before I even touched this, I was like, well, MCP resources and MCP prompts are, I think, really underutilized. So I took this, cut it down to, I mean, there's still a lot. Wait, I think that's the wrong one. Yep, that was the wrong one. I mean, there's still quite a few, I think 10 servers here. But then, Tom, I don't know if how much with the MCP servers you use, they have resources and prompts. But if in Claude, if you go over here and press the plus, then you'll notice there are some MCP servers here. And I think some of these actually will air out. But the prompts are cool because you can, it's basically like a template. So if I click on one of these, I'll say analyzed. Well, that's not a good example because that's pretty basic.
Yeah, okay.
We want to look at gainers or losers, gainers in the last 7 days.
And
of course, yeah. So that one,
yeah, that's all right. But
you get the idea though, right?
And when you were configuring the MCP server, did you have to then create a section and say, right, now go and generate, or Claude Code generate me a bunch of prompt resources? Like, where do you actually store these? Like, what's the analyst consensus? Yeah. Oh, it's Nvidia. Yeah, that would be the wrong ticker. You could fix these with like ticker things. So yeah, go to like the ticker fundamentals.
Yeah, some of these are, and there's I think there are too many. There's too many of the prompts and resources as well. But shit, I was working on this earlier, and
that's okay.
Now these aren't working at all. But you get the idea. So these prompts give you kind of like a little template.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like that because you can have like the prompt engineering in the background and just have the variables come in, which is the problem with some of these things. And then those are resources, is that correct? Like the difference between the icon.
Yeah, the ones with the little page, the page icon. Yep.
And what's the difference there? Like the resource.
If any of these actually work. Hold on a second. So what did you have any particular goal with this massive data or anything special?
Well, what I really want is, if I pull this up, because if you remember, it's a very long time ago we did this, but these are, and so the first, basically what I want is an AI enabled options copilot, options trading copilot. That's both give me new ideas and trading concepts, evaluate my current positions and tell me what I should do, or give me some advice. And then also, like, the end state goal is for some sort of agentic solution that is combining those two things live on my portfolio or live on my, cash position, that's managing and curating it, like, and opening and closing positions within guardrails that I define. So that's the end state. The initial one basically goal was just to, like, can I just get an MCP server that's embedded into a really good, high quality kind of chat interface that just either evaluates what I've got with data I'm bringing in, or just lets me kind of play with ideas when I'm throwing around kind of trading concepts with friends.
Mm-hmm.
That was the goal for this MCP server. The next state is basically this, which is something that we were throwing around a while back, which is basically the chart, like rendering it out as an actual like trading interface almost, that I could either connect up to a brokerage account or just create one. But obviously I'm not going to create a brokerage account, but that would give me the ability to sort of like visualize and understand the risk profile of different positions that's more effectively than just in chat, which is like, all right, say an example of an options trading strategy is like, you might go long or short. Michael Burry, he might be like, all right, well, I want to go short on Nvidia, and then I want to visualize what going short on Nvidia would look like. How much would it cost? How far would the stock have to move for me to be in the money on that position? And then how much would I make over time? And then a follow-up might be, all right, we'll model that out, but model it when with the impact of volatility, the volatility change, because that changes the cost of the option, right? And just play out those scenarios, because there's a lot of scenario building kind of within options trading, because options trading is like 3D. It's like a 3D chess kind of thing. Now that could actually be in stream. It might actually be better as an interface to have it like with generated UI components, like where it's like, all right, we'll render that out into a a standardized UI layout that shows me, rendering over time, which might just be like the chart components, but could pull in from, say, the MCP server, as opposed to having it like
Yeah, I was
be.
thinking about, we talked about MCP UI. So it has like the composable components, and that would be perfect for graphs and stuff like that. Or,
They're back.
we're
Yeah.
like talking about
Sorry,
Claude
mate.
skills. So you can do a lot better rendering of visuals and graphs. I ran this in ChatGPT Pro. I ran out of credits. Now they're selling extra credits. The first time I saw that was today.
I can
It
show
said
you this.
you're out.
You're out of credits on the first time on. I can show you this. I'll show you. I'll just to.
I've seen a button where they're like, "Hey, it's okay. You can just pay for more." I think that's new.
Okay, everybody's. Yeah, this is the If you remember, this is like the UI chart component elements that I'd probably want, which is like, all right, this is everything that has a low, high IV. These are like standard. These are standard kind of charts that you would expect in any kind of options trading environment. And this is all just rendered on the fly. Some of them, that doesn't make any sense, but this was just rendered on the fly from V0. So it'd be something like this where you could pick up these components and just say, all right, I want to view the details of that, execute the trade, whatever it is. Then this strategy analysis, this is a typical, time series chart where you can model it over time. These are all standard kind of things you see in trading platforms. It'll be all this sort of stuff that I would want to integrate either in chat or as a standalone app.
Yeah, I think that could be pretty cool with this type of data. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind giving me a second?
Well,
I've got some guys.
now that
Some guys just came in. You keep talking, I'll come back. But I just
Yeah,
wanted
no
to talk
worries.
to them.
All good.
Hey, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. So you tried to configure the server I sent you in ChatGPT. It didn't work.
I couldn't really get it going. If you can just show us, that'd be sick. And then
Yeah, I'll show you where you can add that. Yeah, so I think you can actually just go to your settings and then connectors, and they have the list. They have the list, like the catalog of official, and then you can press this create button. And for remote servers, I guess that's the only way you'd be able to do it with ChatGPT. It's pretty straightforward. The servers that I'm talking about here, they don't have authentication or API keys. Well, it has Massive requires an API key, but it's like in the server. I just did it for ease. But yeah, all you'd have to do is put in the URL that I sent you, and then it should add. So here you see I have both Massive, the massive server, and then the reimagined version with the prompts and resources. So again, I'm not a trader, so I used ChatGPT 5 Pro to come up with a good prompt, and then iterated on it a little bit. But essentially, I was curious about like what are the top movers, and then what are some correlations that you wouldn't expect. So like, we're just talking about Nvidia and the bubble talk. Well, that's a huge part of our economy. So what areas is that going to affect if it crashes? That's not technology. That's kind of what I was trying to get out of this. But
and so it just generated this as you asked it to generate this as a report, like prompt, effectively. It's like meta prompting, and then that will call the MCP server. Did you have to specifically specify that, or did you kind of say do a bunch, like do whatever you want? You could use search, and then if you need the actual data, you could use the massive MCP.
I don't think I specifically.
And was that the right massive? Was it massive?
Yeah, here's tools. Yeah, I did put that.
You have access to market data. Yeah, okay. Returns, volatility ratios, analytical frameworks, and correlation trend analysis. Yeah, sick. So what does it do? And then it specified the output. If you click on the tool call, see what it's calling. Massive. Okay, rad. And then this stream of content that comes down
better.
This is how it comes out, right? And those like that's just a big long kind of JSON blah. VWOCHLTN as the headers. I'm assuming correlate with the documentation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So this was, in the way that it spits out all this data. I mean, this is just an API converted to MCP. Doesn't seem like it was designed as with MCP in mind necessarily.
Definitely
So I
not.
think you could actually do this. I think you could do this a lot better.
Well, if you imagine
And
like
then,
the typical app builder for this kind of API is like Robinhood, right? It's like, get me the price of blah, and it's just coming through whatever it is. They just need the raw data, the data feed. I don't know, like what the best as an MCP developer, like this is I guess an architecture choice, an architecture thing that you would know more about than me, but like in this context, like what's the best approach? Is it better to like have your own like MCP as code, or like have a separation of concerns? You've got an MCP kind of like, I don't know, tool call, but then it's like calling a formatted data set that maybe you've already done some work on. Like, I don't really know. Is it, if it's better, like, is it
yeah,
okay
that's
just
what
to
I would try to
stream?
handle. I would try to handle this with, like, if you're able to download and store files like in a container or something like that. And
I think it is like, that's
I don't
what
know if it's
these
set up
are.
in a way you could really do that, but that would
Well,
be a much better.
well, if you go back up, actually, I think that's what it's actually doing, because it also has access to the flat files. There's a flat file API as well. If you see there, like the tickers CSV, or is it
Yeah,
converting
but
this into a
isn't it
CSV format? It's just literally
it's
streaming.
making this into
It's
yeah,
making
it's
them.
taking
Yeah,
all
right.
the output.
Ugh. Okay. Oh, and then it's visualizing it, so it's putting them. Yeah. I guess this is okay if if like compute is endless and you don't really care.
Yeah, it's not very efficient,
It's
right?
just like whatever, just put it in there.
Yeah, so this will actually run for quite a while. Something I thought was interesting, because there's some servers like this where it's like, well, the AI isn't necessarily doing a lot of heavy lifting. It's just calling these functions. So if you look in like this is a like testing tool that I made, but you can essentially just press these buttons and they're more like triggering a function or something like that. So I think you do a lot of interesting things with this server or servers like it.
So that tool, like that's MCP Central, that's your app. That's like you can go in and then like test querying it, see the outputs, and debug. Is that sort of it?
Yeah, it's set up kind of weird because I was not necessarily worried, but I didn't want to put out a full chatbot where anybody can type in anything they want. So this was like a kind of a temporary deal, but it's still using a LLM, but it has a system prompt that it kind of explains, like you could see any server. So just do your best and try to create a prompt that makes sense, and then it gives you like a one shot. So you can't type in your own input, but you can still like just make sure it works. Here's kind of what these tools do.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I still use it, still helpful. But yeah, it's using the interpreter, the code interpreter built into ChatGPT, and it's creating Python code to run this analysis.
Yeah, and that's the bit where I'm sort of struggling a bit with this, where it goes from chat into some sort of app interface where, and I actually have this challenge with like ChatGPT Pro and some data analysis stuff that I'm doing, which is like I want it to be consistent on its code, like the code gen side. Like I kind of want it to actually interface into like have guardrails that say, all right, well, every time you do this, do it the same way. Like I don't want to have to dictate to it in terms of like, all right, well, do a volatility kind of back test analysis on this position and tell me like, based on historical volatility movements, like what your expected kind of impact on the options position might be over time. But if I ask it to do that, and then I ask it to do a different question and a follow up, I want it to do that in the same way. But I don't want it, but then it's hard to validate that because it might generate some new code that might be slightly different on the next request, right? Like, do you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, on this
Yeah, I think that's
generation
where
engine.
something like Claude Skills could really come
Yes.
in handy with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. So that's effectively why, yeah, when we were looking through Claude Skills and documentation, they're like, when you are asked to do this, there is a script, follow that script. And then,
Yeah.
but then what would be great is if as you're going through this is like meta concepts where it's like, as you're going through this, we're doing this for the first time and it's kind of live-ish. If you could then say, all right, obviously with this is ChatGPT, it's slightly different, but you could say, all right, we'll convert that into a skill, like some sort of meta thing where it's like, all right, I'm pretty happy with that. I would love that in some of the ChatGPT Pro work that I've done, for example. It was like, all right, well, that is what I want because I
Yeah.
want to share this with a colleague and I need it to be reproducible to convert that into a skill. And then I can give it to, say, a colleague who needs to do a similar piece of analysis, or needs to validate my work because then he or she might have to then take it and do something else. I guess that actually goes back to what we were talking about before. Like, that is what an operating system kind of engine should look and feel like, really, if you really want to embed this into like a business. It's like, all right, we've got a consistent way. They've kind of done it a little bit on Claude's side with like config files, right? Where it's like, all right, here's a practice where you've got a config engine. We share it across developers or a development team and everyone has the same process and practice. Nothing like watching tokens stream out slowly.
This is crazy. And of course, if I'm always just running it in the background. It's not like I sit here and watch this, but it seems like it hasn't gone this long for. But yeah, with ChatGPT Pro, it was amazing. It was actually, the output was super good. The graphics were really in depth, like the graphs and stuff like that. But and you could specify. I mean, it's using matplotlib, some of the standard stuff, so you could specify this, and then you're essentially creating a skill. Does OpenAI have, like, on their assistants SDK? Do they have anything like skills?
I don't believe so. Plus, I'm pretty sure the assistants, I haven't used it in ages. I'm pretty sure that's being deprecated. Give me a second. When I have been involved in building agents on the OpenAI API, it's not skills, but you specify like the functions. They were the guys that kind of pushed the function kind of standardization format, right? Which is like, when this happens, you execute in this way, and then the format response is like standardized.
Right.
When we go into the LangSmith thing, like that, and that's pretty ho-hum now. Everyone kind of is very familiar with that, right? But at the time, that was pretty like revolutionary. But no, but even then, like, they have the agents SDK and the agents MD file, right? And I don't know if they've also then responded to some of these initiatives from Claude, because they're all trying to like standardize to their own approaches.
Yeah, I know. But everyone just everyone's headed in the same direction, just copying each other.
Well, there's no real difference between agents MD and Claude MD, right? There's literally, like, it's just the same thing.
Yeah, they're so basic. It's just like text file. It has a pointer. I mean, that's what you get out of skills, is you tell it to run this script rather than it having to create the script or read the entire thing. It can just run in the background.
I really love how they do documentation. It's just excellent.
OpenAI.
I guess. Yeah, OpenAI. Well, OpenAI, Claude, like those guys. And you know how it's sort of like documentation became practice? Once these tech companies became like really large. I think Stripe was the first one to realize that, like, the more you invest in documentations, the more developer adoption you will have.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a strong relationship to those things. So they spend time on it, like the LangChain guys do as well. They like spend time on it. They really care about the documentation experience as a entry point. And so many software companies just do not do it. I've been guilty of that in the past, not spending enough time on developer docs.
Well, early on, everyone complained about LangChain's documentation, and I always thought it was great from the beginning. I mean, I could,
Yeah, I have
even
a
early
theory
on,
about that.
I didn't know as much. Like, I could still work through it, no problem.
Yeah, I have a theory about that. I think they were used to one-click deploy start. Like, I think they were expecting LangChain to work in a certain way. And I think the perspective of the LangChain kind of packages coming from Python meant that there were a bunch of JavaScript developers coming in going, well, where's my one-click deploy? Why can't I see Railway as a button in here? And they're like, no, this is a different thing, guys. Like, you need to know, like, Jupyter notebooks are in here for a reason. Like, but so there was probably, I'd say, an expectation disconnect.
I used to use Jupyter Notebook a lot, and just the other day I was doing something and I almost quit. I was like, I hate this. So I don't know how I did it before. All right, is this? Oh, we're getting some results. Relationship between semiconductors and technology. Well, that's not unexpected.
Can I have a look? Hang on. Stop scrolling. I'm reading. Hang on.
All right, here, let me go back up.
Interesting.
Yeah, it seems like with this type of data, you really have to aggregate it and combine it with a bunch of different sources because everyone has their own methodology, right? Like paying attention to weird things that maybe aren't even on the internet or completely unrelated. So this massive data is going to be very focused. But that's kind of what I'm getting at or starting to wonder is that's kind of like the whole value in MCP is being able to combine it with other sources. So this is really rich. I mean, I think you could make it even more valuable.
Yeah. Can I show you? I might show you something as a reference, which is like an interesting kind of comparison. So I really love that was slow, right? Which is expected because it was ChatGPT thinking like there's a bunch of data coming in. What I want to understand is how close. Sorry, let me take a step back. This is an embedded cognitive version of what an options trader or like a group of them or like a hedge fund or whoever would do on a kind of a rolling basis, which is strategic. And then there are lower level decision sets that occur. Maybe an hour. Sorry, mate. Lower level decision sets that occur that are tactical, that require real-time information or near real-time, and a lot of that is being abstracted away into like automated trading, all that sort of stuff, which we all know about. It's been happening for a very long time. Let's see this.
The hot topic, or about to be the hot topic, is like streaming events and notifications based stuff. So you talk about real time and setting certain triggers. I mean, I wish I knew more about trading because I know the technology. So once again, for the second week in a row, if you're a billionaire, hit me up.
So where I was going with that is basically like you and I have seen, I'm just trying to pull up this screen for you so I can show you. You and I have seen like a range of, here we go, I've got it. So that automated coding kind of environment, trading environment, pardon me, I haven't had enough coffee, was in the past built on a bunch of this kind of logic, branching kind of logic, where this is probably one of the better versions of this called Option Alpha, which I'm more familiar with, and they have automated bots that you can kind of subscribe to and develop of your own. But it's all, as the LangChain guys would say, it's like a workflow builder, and we are not a workflow builder, right? Like it's the LangChain perspective. If I clone this and just show you, I want to actually, Unity, here we go. I'll show you exactly what it looks like. And I want to show you a complicated one so you can get a sense of actually what it really looks like when it's going at it the nth degree. I just have to go and edit an existing bot, Falcon 10. This one's pretty insane. See it? Here's the template. This is what it looks like. It's a bunch of branching decision tree. Like these are decision trees, right? Bot level checks. Like this is just constantly running. It has a bunch of like price checks, exit and entry kind of scenarios. And it says like, is there a like a Fed meeting this week? Yes, no, loop through symbols that's defined. The bot has exactly 0 positions with this symbol. There's a bunch of other checks within that. Yes, no. And then it basically goes through a bunch of these like different checks.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is,
you have like specialized agents.
Yeah. So what I want to know is it possible and better to convert these things? So when you look at these, like they actually run, like this platform's been around for ages, and but the guys are incredible, and they must be thinking about doing this or already have done it, which is like, this just kicks off every day and opens a bunch of different positions. This is paper trading, but it'll open up positions. It'll evaluate them based on those decision criteria, which is very, very old school, if else when kind of for loops. Like it's just all it's pretty gnarly in terms of the complexity, but it's pretty basic in terms of the logic, right? And I want to know, is it possible to embed these things into a LangGraph agent that abstracts away a bunch of those automation loops and has a cognitive architecture where a bunch of those decision trees are embedded within it and potentially sub-agents that could then outperform this execution framework? That's really the high level kind of reason why I'm interested in this specific kind of application of AI to options trading like this, because these things are churning every day, and you see like, and this is a massive industry now. Like there are hundreds of thousands of people that are looking at this sort of stuff all of the time. So I'd be surprised if it wasn't already out there in the wild being run, these things, by someone. But they're opening and closing these different positions, constantly looking to sort of optimize P&L against each of these different positions. This is an SPY, so over the S&P 500, which is the most liquid options market in the world, looking for opportunities to basically capture a bunch of premium every day in an automated fashion. And they're basically they're trading against other bots. So that's the high level goal. Convert a pretty traditional old school for loop kind of structure into a LangGraph kind of cognitive architecture to find alpha.
Yeah, I would think that would be perfect, and probably deep agents in particular.
But then the challenge is obviously
specialized sub agents.
The challenge is obviously this data feed, right? And how that data feed comes in from, like, in this case, say the MCP server, or is it you'd have to build an entire trading platform, bring in all the data correctly into some sort of data set, then have LangGraph over the top of it, so a user could then configure a version of this, but in an agentic kind of more AI focused fashion. I'm assuming it's the latter.
You'd want to feed that data in like straight from the API, and then process it yourself and set up, like event alerts and notifications and stuff that trigger the LangGraph agents.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I can imagine the user experience, but I struggle with the speed and pace. So, for example, like, you just could not run it like we're doing in chat. It just wouldn't work. There's also the cost factor. Running a set of like even my like LangGraph deployments here, like imagine running 100,000 of these and requiring the minutes, like the on-demand minutes plus the bursty kind of like take up. Like that's a pretty gnarly idea, because you would want to have multiple ones, or you'd have like, it would be a significant hosted agentic agent kind of app. This isn't just like one. This isn't just like the Vault LangGraph agent, right?
Right. Yeah.
What does the cost profile look like is another thing on my mind. I'm like, is it even possible to do based on some of these things at the moment? Yeah. Anyway, do you want to dive into Lang sub tracing and data sets and experiments? Do you want to do that?
Yeah. What did you learn?
Yawn. What did I learn? Well, pause. I'm going to go to the bathroom and then we can chat.
Okay. I'll show you. I ran this prompt in Claude too. I'll show you the difference.
Hey, I'm back. All right. So I was looking at, or I said that I would look at and didn't get very far through, this data sets and experiments chunk of LangSmith. The reason for this is I want to build a backtesting framework, number one, for an existing feature I'm managing. Or a couple of actually live AI features that I'm managing at the moment, to do some very basic like backtest, model upgrade, bunch of other stuff. So that's number one. Number two, I have a optimization hypothesis that I can, like, we built an AI feature that is successful in terms of its actual application execution, where it's built in a very robust fashion, but it's not being optimized into a customer outcome that I'm trying to get to, right? So effectively the AI feature is working, but the expectation of the customer outcome hasn't been realized. And my hypothesis is that can be achieved through an optimization framework that the LangChain guys in particular, I think, are probably the best that I've seen in terms of describing that practice. And this is where, like, Harrison, a bunch of those guys at LangChain went to what I think is very in-depth links to describe the practice of AI engineering or agent engineering as a process of refining offline, online, and real-time, and like test kind of optimizations, where you're constantly gathering feedback and iterating your AI application towards those user outcomes and it's a practice that you develop. It's like an internal muscle that's sort of not really embedded in a lot of developer teams. I think it's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that's not, I guess, widely understood. And I think it's also one of the reasons why when we build, and people are building like API call based AI apps that are plugged into, say, traditional SaaS products, they're not necessarily seeing all of the returns they were expecting in terms of like user satisfaction, like user outcomes. Is that fair? Was that a fair summary?
Yeah, like every SaaS integration ever. I mean, companies pay a lot of money to implement integrations, and then there's always some issue or didn't meet the expectation. I would say
Yeah,
that's very accurate.
and this is the bloody annoying thing. Like I've been on so many calls of like people doing AI app demos around like, and did you know there's an MIT study that showed 95% of failure and all this sort of shit. I'm like, guys, come on, stop quoting me that one study that came out, because there are other ones saying that lots of companies are getting lots of success, as we have seen. And one of the reasons is because of this. So what I'd recommend is, if you're interested in doing anything like this, is to dive into this course on the LangChain Academy. It's free. Just go and register for an account. These guys do a great job. And the guy who actually is doing this, who does all of the course overviews, is excellent. He works on the deep agents framework from LangChain. Yeah. So I recommend just going and doing this course. Like I'm kind of working my way through this as a method, but basically it's like setting up, tracing, all that sort of stuff. We've covered that a lot. That's not that significant. Then testing and evaluation, then prompt engineering. And this part is basically what I want to talk through today, which is like testing and evaluation, which is where you use LangSmith. You load in datasets, you get those datasets from somewhere and you annotate them, or you get a gold standard dataset that you reference kind of ways that you're optimizing your app towards that outcome. It's slightly different depending on what you're doing. My use case is actually a bit more complicated because I've got a bunch of logs and a bunch of historical data of the AI results, but then I have another dataset that I have to reference where there's been user feedback on that output that's basically indicated that there are errors that are not being caught by my app. And that's that part that I'm trying to optimize, which is slightly different. So what my actual test is actually more
with
of a test.
the thumbs up, thumbs down type of feedback.
You can kind of think of it like that. Yeah, mine's a bit more complex in that I've got a bunch of data coming through that's like very proprietary to the industry I work in, which is real estate and mortgage finance. And then the data output basically that we're testing against needs to catch things that are not necessarily embedded within that data set, but that come down the pipe from a third party kind of evaluation criteria. But in effect, it is a binary thing. It's basically yes or no. Did we or did we not? Kind of like a thumbs up. Did we or did we not catch the thing that may or may not have been predictable based on, say, legislation? Because there's a bunch of legislation, so you can kind of predict those things, or like what I call catchable. So that's one category of taxonomy that I'm looking for in my data set. There's another one which I'm calling predictable, which is like we might not necessarily have known that that's what was going to happen once we pushed that data off from the AI output, but probably we could try and predict it if we did more back testing. And then there's another category which is sort of like random, which is uncontrollable really, where because these are user pieces of feedback that are coming down the pipe at me from customers. Now I have a different evaluation criteria for that. So when you consider like basically in here, which is really rad, they basically go through and say like you've got kind of a bunch of data sets that you might push these things through. And there are different ways to think about how, like methods that you think about when you're doing evaluations and experiments that you need to consider. And they do a really good job of sort of laying it out in really simple terms using these sorts of things like these diagrams, which is like, all right, I've got my application V1, V2. This is prompt engineering as an example. And then you push that through a data set, which you're calling your gold standard data set in this simple example. And then you benchmark the accuracy output. So that's a really simple example. But there are other, and that's where your evaluation kind of runs come in. And that's what you're effectively doing. And you can do this live. You can do it you could do it once off. You could do it, basically optimizing different types of prompts if it's just prompt engineering. You could also do it as a data input or a data formatting thing. You could also think about it as a version of your app where maybe you're not transforming the data correctly. Then it goes into some sort of AI workflow and then you test that. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. The other thing I didn't realize is that guys, they take the software testing framework like unit and regression testing and sort of basically pick that up and apply it as well, which is really, really helpful for me because a lot of developers, obviously, we're all familiar with those terms. So you can kind of think about an agent engineering with the same paradigm in terms of like software testing, which is really great. This is an example, yeah. So it's going through and saying, all right, well, that's one run. You've got your reference input and your reference output, and you just do it over and over again. Basically, you're iterating towards an outcome. It might not necessarily always be an accuracy outcome. It could be an accuracy plus a cost outcome. You might be trying to optimize your costs, those sorts of things.
Yeah. So you generated a bunch of examples of prompts, and that's the first step with the experiments.
Yeah.
What is your methodology exactly?
So I have a bunch of prompts. I can't show all of that stuff because it's proprietary, right? But what I did was I just went to Hugging Face, and we can go through a bit of a process here. You can go and like test out a bunch of data sets. Hugging Face has a shitload of them. And this is a great example, which is like, it's called the prompt. Yeah, here it is. Awesome ChatGPT prompt data set. But you can see what it's like, an Ethereum developer. And then like, it's got, this is the act, this is the prompt. And then you can test the outputs. In this case, this is just an evaluation, right? Now you could go through and say, you can build evaluators. So there's one thing which is basically like you can run a bunch of experiments and put them through an evaluation. And an evaluation can actually just be an LLM judging the output, right? That's a typical kind of output, which is like, give me a score out of whatever, like 1 to 100, whatever it is. And OpenAI has a really good framework for this where they've just got a bunch of LLM as a judge kind of evaluation out of the box things you can just click on and run through. If you're not familiar with this and you use OpenAI's API, I'd recommend starting with there. This is a classic one where it's an evaluation criteria. There's also pairwise experiments because like if your output is not deterministic, where it's not easily defined as like better or worse, then you can basically have a comparison set. Like this isn't one output, this is another output, grade it, which is basically LLM arenas, right? That's for humans, but you could also use an AI LLM evaluator, say this output's better than that output. And then you can also do these few shot ones where it's just like, all right, just do a quick one. Basically here, what I wanted to do was sort of take these examples. So you can go into you can actually do this in like a Stack Overflow post. I want you to act as a Stack Overflow post. I will ask a program related question and you will reply with what the answer should be. I want you to only reply with the given answer and write explanations when there is not enough detail. When there is not enough details, do not write explanations. When I need to tell you something in English, I will do so by putting text inside curly brackets like this. My first question is, and then this is the first question. The whole idea is you can then go and take these and you can effectively run comparisons within here against these, and then you can add them to different data sets. You can split, you can create examples, you can run experiments. So I want to do is run some of these and then just evaluate the criteria. That was my first sort of first step for this. And then potentially maybe once I've spent a bit more time on this, have a curated data set where I want to go, all right, I want to run that in turns. So just like continually run an experimental framework on this and then have an evaluation set that says, all right, based on the changes you've made, model upgrade is a classic one. Another one might be a bit of a prompt curation, like a prompt engineering workflow. Another one might be like how the data is actually passed in, because I've like in my actual criteria, I've got like data passing into the context window as well and formatting that correctly or doing more calculations or conversions on that. So if I come over here and just go, I want to basically do an experiment, and you can run it in the playground. You can run it in LangSmith Studio. You can run via the SDK. Let's just go and I want to do a simple one. Motivational speaker might be good. If I experiment in the playground on that GPT-5 mini, and I want to compare it to, I need that prompt. I want to compare that to GPT-5 mini versus, maybe we could do it against Anthropic. sorry, my Anthropic against their, I haven't actually used their new Haiku model. I don't know if you have.
It runs in the
Haiku.
background, so you have just didn't realize it.
I just didn't know. Just didn't realize. I'm going to change my screen quickly because that's breaking. And then the other thing that's cool here is you can like have max requests. It's actually a really quite a highly configurable set, so you can curate the number of requests. I didn't realize just how built out this part of the platform had become.
Yeah. Well, it's really the core of, it's like the whole point of everything they do there. LangGraph, LangChain is really around these evaluations and experiments, and they just do too many other cool things that doesn't get the attention.
Yeah. Now I want to run this, and I only want, here we go, output A. There's no output. What I actually want to do is I need to actually generate these into the data set, don't I? That's super annoying. I select the prompt. Oh, that's cool. And they all, you seen this? This must just pull directly in from the prompt.
Your screen. You stopped sharing your screen a second ago.
What happens once I switch over? That's really cool. All right, we can actually do that instead, right? Which is, if I just go to the build, go to the playground, get rid of that. I can actually go to the prompt playground, research agent, search prompt, recommendation prompt. What's this? That is all in Vietnamese. Let's go and try this.
Strange.
You're a student, buddy.
The prompt was
the latest version. All right, cool. Now, you can tell I've obviously prepared for this. This is what I was trying to look at last night when I was drinking beers in Dallas Airport. Do you know how I actually generate the response to do the comparison?
Are you still in the experiments? Oh, you're in this playground. I've also mentioned how I've done a lot of this through, again, MCP, but kind of like on a feedback loop where Claude Code has access to the LangSmith through MCP, and then it can run it, take a look at the traces, modify the code, run it again. And then I was looking at these tools. They don't have any evaluation prompts, but I've done that many times. So it must just call the API directly. But yeah, there's so many different ways you can do this. I think
so
setting up
evaluator
hooks on GitHub would be cool. So you automate this on your commits or something like that.
Well, here we go. Basically, I want to run this, get the output and push it through the evaluator. All right, here we go. You're just filling the space. Yeah, okay, cool. So it's now running this and then developing based on that evaluator a correctness score based on a standard. This is sort of like a replication of what you can do in the OpenAI one. But basically, here's a bunch of prompts. Hypnotherapist, this is the output. And then I basically just added like a standard evaluator from the outputs, and the correct average is like 20. It's up to 20. Okay, cool. And then I could run another one. That's the correctness evaluator. I can add another one, hallucination evaluator, consciousness evaluator, code checker evaluator. These are the output ones. And basically what I need to do is create a standard evaluator for my data set and then compare that to, so I want to compare this and add another prompt to compare with the current prompt. What I actually want to do is add another evaluator to compare the output, right? So rerun the outputs on this data set. I don't know if I can do that here. Oh no, that's just another row. That's not what I want to do. So, or that's an experiment. So then can I compare multiple experiments? So if I go back to my experiments area, here are my examples. I want to create a new experiment. No, that's not what I want. Here's my data set. I want to create a new experiment here in the playground. I want to use a different model. Let's try Anthropic Haiku. And then I'm going to start that. But it's overriding the actual outputs.
And this is where you would run LLM as a judge after that to compare, right?
Well, that's sort of, yeah, I guess. This is where
that's an evaluator itself.
This is the evaluator. Here is the output, but I believe it's, this is the experiment, but I don't know if it's recording them into a separate data set, overriding those rows. It looks like it's just overriding those rows in the existing data set here, and then reevaluating them with a high-level evaluation score. If I go back into my experiments, this should be, oh, okay, cool. 2 or 3 experiments running over those examples. Great. Okay, and there is my comparison rate. That's sort of what I was looking for. So I just hadn't gone through the process of actually executing on those. And I can see over time, this is the correctness rate, 0.404 mini, GPT-5 mini. That's cool. All right, cool. That's finally, I've actually gone end to end on one of those things, the run count. Sweet. I can compare the latency. Nice. All right, that's my very basic version that I wanted to do. At least I got to that point. Do you want to show your version in the Microsoft one?
Yeah, let me see. It's been running this entire time we've been talking, but yeah, I can share my screen and show at least. So Tom, I was asking you earlier about Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, and if you'd seen Copilot Studio, and I don't blame you whatsoever because it's very, very confusing. They have all different types of Copilot. There's like 3 or 4 separate, like if you build an agent in this version, it's not available over here. So yeah, it's kind of messy, but it's Microsoft. I mean, they're a monster, and you can kind of tell where they're going. Like even a lot of the stuff we were talking about before as like an operating system, Microsoft has a huge advantage in the fact that like every business, most computers are running Windows. They've created an ecosystem. That's kind of why they exist. I think it was you the other day asked something, or you made a mention of Power Automate containers. Was that you?
Yeah, I was looking for something to solve it's like a security problem I've got where it's a bunch of automations have been kind of spun up in with Python code that's like Claude code generated, and I'm like, I need to get this into compliance. Like there's no way this can go into production at all, but it's non-technical users and I need to kind of wrap my arms around. So, and I was like looking at Power Automate, and they have these like containerized environments where you can kind of like, I was like, oh, all right, well that's something that's within my compliance because it's within the audited and compliant kind of IT infrastructure, right? And I'm like, oh, well, maybe that could be a solution before this stuff can actually go out into the wild. This is sort of like the sysadmin kind of IT kind of constraint of like, well, I want to enable non-technical people who have these now technical skills, right? But then how do I get my arms around it in a way that's going to be secure and compliant and auditable and kind of trackable and traceable and all of those things?
Yeah.
So that was my theory. I'm like, I saw that and I was like, all right, my Power Automate has these like containerized like VM machines. I'm like, all right, sweet. I hooked that up. It's already connected. We're already on like the 365, like the whole company is on those things. I'm like, well, surely that's what it's for.
Yeah, and it's evolved a lot since. I mean, I've used Power Automate for a long time, just not lately. And some of the things they have out there now, like Process Miner, I think is what it's called. So you can basically record a screenshot or a video of your screen, and it records your voice as well. Like you can talk. So basically giving a demo, and then it uses all these like AI models that Microsoft has for like document intelligence. They have these really specialized things for like just looking at screenshots or whatever. And then
Okay. Are you sharing your screen? Is that, or
yeah, I'm
you
trying
can't?
to.
That sounds really good actually. Because like one of the problems I've got for this, like an enterprise rollout of AI solutions to like business problems is like, it's too distributed. Like if you're a startup, it's fine. But if you're any kind of large organizations, like I just do not want to even consider the shadow IT execution across a bunch of this shit. So if it could be efficiently rolled up into the Microsoft stack, then like, for example, like then 100% I just go with that or whatever it is. I know Google also has a version of this. They released it on like Google Cloud recently, Microsoft like and AWS as well. But like that'd be perfect because then I could say, right, everything's rolled in. There's like a back end kind of management environment that the cloud guys could handle. Plus there's the front end, which is like consumers, like our users that are used to Teams, and they could just like, it's a very simple, like if there's a stack integration, like I've had a couple of demos of people showing off agentic stuff. I'm like, there's no fucking way I can buy that because it's an absolute nightmare. Whereas in here, I could just say, yeah, okay, guys, like we've got our guardrails, we've got our controls, it's all audited, we keep our compliance, like everything just like it's happy days.
Yeah, and I've had some good conversations lately about like Microsoft has such a awesome environment for the compliance and all those things that you were just talking about. But you don't have to do it all within the Microsoft environment. I mean, there's going to be pros and cons in a lot of different scenarios. But Tom, what I thought was pretty cool is they have this evaluator library, kind of like you were showing on the LangSmith side, but for the prompts. But they have like one there. I was actually looking at a couple of these for a project. Again, I'm not an expert on these. I'm just getting into it on the Azure side.
Hey mate,
What was I
I
looking?
might have I might have to
There,
bail. I might have to bail on this and let you finish it off. I've got some dudes coming in literally into my house to fix a bunch of shit, and they're literally
yeah,
at
no,
the
it's
door.
no worries. I'm not gonna stay on here, but yeah, they have this like real time or it's not real time, constant. What do you call that? Like continuous monitoring and evaluations. So yeah, maybe I'll share more when I
Perfect.
get into it. I can actually demo, but very
So
impressive.
you don't need like an enterprise account to access this in Azure, right? Anyone can just go and get access to this, or do you need like a?
It's what, man, with Microsoft, it's a disaster on the licensing side. I have a enterprise Microsoft 365 tenancy, so I have everything set up like business grade. I know you can do free trials, but I don't know if that gets you full access or not. A lot of this Foundry stuff is locked down, kind of like that OpenAI. You have to verify your organization and things like that.
Yeah, cool,
But
mate.
yeah,
I might
Tom,
have
I'll
to go
show
and check
you
it out.
sometime. I'll show you Copilot Studio. That's pretty cool. Whoops.
So sorry, mate. It's about to get super loud.
Next time.
Let's call an end to this. What has probably been the most disjointed and rambling episode of the build. I promise I'll bring my my B game as opposed to my C to D game next week.
Hey, we're both in the same spot, so all good, man.
I promise you. I'll have to promise you a better demo next week. All right.
You promised me two things: music and Google Gemini 3. So no
Well,
more
as you can tell,
promising until we get
I
those.
seem to be the master of over promising and under delivering when it comes to the build.
Well, it's actually me. You called me out, so I just have to. I'm just giving it right back.
All right, mate. Thanks. I'll speak to you
All right,
soon.
man. Have a good one.